walking virtually along the world's most revered footpaths and connecting the global community of pilgrims. It's the Sacred Steps Podcast, available on YouTube and your favorite podcast app. Broadcasting from the Shaymare Studios in Florida, here's your host, pilgrim, backpacker, and author, Kevin Donahue.
Buen Camino, pilgrims, and welcome back to the Sacred Steps Podcast. I'm Kevin Donahue. On today's episode, I'm stepping away from our traditional format of hosting pilgrims and authors to focus instead on answering some of the questions you've been sending via Facebook Messenger about pilgrimage in the age of COVID. Many of you are asking, can we walk the Camino de Santiago in 2021? And what is your advice for pilgrimage this spring? Others have asked for guidance on the Via FRANCIGENA, the Pilgrim's Way, California Missions Trail, and other sacred footpaths. Through this podcast, we're connecting the global community of pilgrims with followers in 31 countries throughout Europe, North and South America, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Japan, Korea, India. While we all recognize that our regions are making tremendous efforts to protect our local communities during COVID, no one answer will apply universally to every country or continent. In a moment, I'll review specifics for many of the more popular pilgrimage walks that you've asked about. But let me first say, if you're considering pilgrimage in 2021, my best advice is to closely follow the national guidance of your own government and your national embassy where you may be traveling. I'm going to give you some resources for different pilgrim organizations in the show notes below and ask that you also reference those. You should review their updates because they are often the most timely and most specific to pilgrimage, with information such as albergue or hostel availability, shrine or cathedral closures, and updates on walking between regions. Let's start with the Camino de Santiago. By far the most frequent question I'm getting right now is something to the effect of, is the Camino de Santiago open? In almost every instance, the answer right now and through spring 21 is generally no. The Camino de Santiago is not open. Spanish authorities have indicated that the emergency order restricting tourism, including country-specific entry restrictions, is expected to remain in place at least through summer 2021. Local pilgrimage for Spanish nationals may be permitted in some instances. Please consult your national embassy, Spain's Travel Health Guidance Worksheet, and your National Camino organization for more timely information. During this podcast, I'm going to reference the show notes because below I will link all of the major national pilgrimage organizations. So for the Camino, that is American Pilgrims on the Camino, the Confraternity of St. James, the Australian Friends of the Camino, the Canadian Company of Pilgrims, the Camino Society of Ireland, and many more global pilgrim societies throughout Europe, Asia, Africa, Latin, and South America. The Via FRANCIGENA. All the nations along the Via FRANCIGENA route have emergency orders in place governing travel and tourism. These mandates are not synchronized, and travel between regions, let alone nations, may be more limited. Travelers from certain regions or countries may also be subject to additional entry restrictions. It is strongly advised that pilgrims follow what is called the 10 rules of a traveler. That's a document that lives on the Via FRANCIGENA organization website, and we'll link it in the show notes. So follow the 10 rules of a traveler. the advice of the Via Francigena organization, and also that of your national embassy. Let's talk now about pilgrimage in Britain. First and foremost, not a change here. International entry restrictions are anticipated to be in place at least through summer 2021. As we record this episode, the UK is in a complete lockdown. That's impacting travel along the Pilgrim's Way, the Way of St. Cuthbert, and other pilgrim places within Britain. Local, regional travel is also subject to further restriction. One note here, European pilgrims should be mindful that travel in general has new requirements because of Brexit. So please review the specific restrictions for the UK, consult with your national embassy, and also we'll link below the British Pilgrimage Trust, which has timely updates on pilgrim routes and restrictions. Next, we're shifting gears and we're talking about the Kumano KODO in Japan. Right now in Japan, travel for tourism and short-term purposes is not permitted. It is anticipated that these restrictions will remain in place up until, or perhaps just after, the Tokyo Olympics in July and August of 2021. Now, if you're already in Japan, local pilgrimage for Japanese nationals may be permissible. My best advice here is to consult with the Tanabe City Kumano Tourism Board, which we'll link in the show notes, as well as your national embassy for timely updates on the Kumano KODO pilgrimage. For the California Missions Trail, which connects the 21 Spanish missions along America's Pacific coast from San Diego to San Francisco. As it stands today, international travel to the United States has essentially halted. Within California itself, there are differing levels of restriction in place by region, including curfews and stay-at-home mandates with civil or criminal penalties designed to limit person-to-person exposure. Now, there are areas where walking and hiking is permissible. However, local restrictions govern travel between California's regions. Pilgrims should look at national, state, and local level, county level restrictions within California. And if you're traveling internationally, consult with your embassy for timely updates on the California Mission Walk. Now, given all that we're discussing, I know that there are some American pilgrims who might be interested in learning more about the California Missions Trail. So on our next episode, we're walking virtually alongside pilgrim and educator Christian Clifford as he recounts his walk along the 800-mile journey and the lasting legacy of St. Junipero Serra, the 18th century priest who helped establish the mission system in California from San Diego to San Francisco. So that's a brief rundown of where international pilgrimage stands as of January 2021. Please click the show notes and reference my blog, OneStepThenAnother.com, where I'm making timely updates as new information becomes available. Before we go, and I think this is an important and timely reminder, pilgrimage is an act of devotion. It is an act of contrition. To walk pilgrimage is a physical exercise of faith. Like many acts of faith, it requires us to have an open heart. Just because things are not as we may wish them to be, doesn't mean that they are not as they should be. I would encourage you to have a pilgrim's heart and an open mind. While your plans may not be unfolding as you expected, have confidence, have faith. For all things there is a season, and soon the season will come for you to make pilgrimage. Thank you for subscribing to the Sacred Steps podcast. While we are still physically apart, I am so grateful to be walking virtually alongside each of you. Thank you for rating the show on your podcast app and for all of your comments on Facebook. If you'd like to share this episode with other pilgrims, please click share on your podcast app and send this episode as a text, share it to your Facebook page, or send it by email. Until next time, be well, stay safe, and buen camino.
This has been the Sacred Steps Podcast. Visit sacredstepspodcast.com for episode notes, links, or to contact Kevin. Watch us online on YouTube. We read every comment. Please add your review and feedback. Before you go, tap subscribe to have episodes added to your playlist. Until next time, buen camino.